Hi friends, this is the first in the series of videos which will ultimately cover the whole of psychology syllabus. According to many of the suggestions which were very logical, um, I am starting this video of, this is the first video which will, let's call it the 0th video, which will deal with the syllabus of UPSC Main Psychology. And I'll be telling you what is important, what is not, how much time to put in which one, and a general overview of the syllabus. So, which chapters can you combine with which, and so on. I'll be covering both paper 1 and paper 2 if possible in this video, but let's see how it goes. Okay, so let me see where it is. Yeah, so here it is. This is the page which deals with the syllabus of UPSC Psychology. You can download this from UPSC. As you can see, this is directly from UPSC website. If you scroll down to, this is 2018's notification. If you scroll down to page number 84 of this, you'll see the whole of psychology syllabus. So starting with the first chapter of paper 1. So basically the whole psychology exam would be divided into two papers, paper 1 and paper 2. So paper 1, the first chapter is introduction. It will basically deal with what psychology is basically, and let me zoom this a bit. Okay. So this is if you see, I'm here right now. It says definition of psychology. So basically, what is psychology? Psychology is a study of mental behavior, mental processes, and human behavior. And there are other technicalities to it, which we'll come to later. Then you will learn about what is expected is basically what is the history of psychology, how did this branch of study develop, and what is its recent trends, and how is psychology a social science or is it a natural science, and how are scientific methods employed within it. Then we have psychology, how is it connected to other social sciences and natural sciences. Example, how is it connected to criminology, or how is it connected to law, or how is it connected to political science or anthropology. Then, in every year, each year, there's one question on this last section, which is how is, psychology applicable to problems in the society that we are facing. If you ask me, if there is one area from which one question is definitely, sure shot or confirmed to come or appear in front of you in the paper, it is this highlighted portion, application of psychology to societal problems. Every year they will ask one question, and basically, generally that is the first question in paper 1. In 2017, they asked, that means my attempt, they asked how has psychology helped you in tackling a societal problem which you have seen around you. It was something like this. The words may be different, but having practiced almost similar questions not many times, the answer to such questions is more or less the same. You bring in behaviorism, learning, mental disorders, memory, thinking, problem solving, motivation, emotion, all those concepts you group into one and then write an answer about it. Okay. Anyway, so mark this, please. This is really important. Only the last part of this whole chapter is important. Nothing else is going to be asked from you. And to cover this, all you need to do is to just read NCERT. Standard 11th NCERT, An Introduction to Psychology, or whatever is its title. There's just one NCERT book for psychology. For class 11th, just read the first chapter. That should be fine. We'll also be going through it, but I think in later parts of the course. Okay, next is methods of psychology. This so basically, what I'll try to do is to club this chapter 2 and chapter 3 together. That means research methods, that's chapter 3, and methods of psychology. The reason being, these are the practical parts of psychology. That means how do you do research? There will be survey, observation, case study. What are the different types of research methods in social sciences? So this particular chapter, which is chapter 2, is actually common to all the social sciences, be it anthropology, be it sociology. This will be common. There also you have descriptive, evaluative, diagnostic, prognostic research methods. You have survey, observation, case study, experiments. You have quasi-experimental designs, focus group discussions. These are very typical social science topics, which you have to read in almost all these social science subjects. But they are more important in psychology because psychology is a more dependent on experiments and collecting data and analyzing it, then coming to a finding. Okay, and this third chapter is mostly about how do we do that. For example, if you see, there are the reason I grouped these two chapters together, chapter 2 and chapter 3, was that if you see, there are overlaps here only. You see interview here, observation. See, research designs. So here also they are talking about experimental designs, research methods, and here also research design, post facto, experimental. A little bit of statistics comes, which is the application of statistical techniques, ANOVA, factor analysis, regression, and those things. The good thing is that I have already covered chapter 2 and 3 in one of my series of 5 videos, which you will find in my channel. So I won't be covering chapter 2 and 3. Still, if you have some doubt, you can refer to NCERTs for chapter 2 mostly. I think some parts of chapter 2 I have not covered, but they are very well covered in chapter 2, I guess, in NCERT. But I have covered all these. I remember I have covered quasi-experimental designs, grounded theory approach, brainstorming, focus group discussions, ANOVA, correlation, regression, factor analysis, item response theory, everything. So yeah, so basically I won't be covering these 2 chapters. Just hold on a second. 1 second. Yeah, so next comes development of human behavior. In this, what we study in psychology is basically how does a human and his behavior or her behavior develop over time. That means when he's a child, when he's an adolescent, a young adult, and then an old adult, and how does genetic factors affect? How do genetic factors affect his behavior and mental processes, and how does his um, environment in which he lives in that affects it? Also, an important part is cultural factors. For example, even if the physical environment is the same for a child in which he's developing, but if he is born in a if he's born in United States, where the society is generally thought to be very individualistic. We'll come to these things later. Individualistic, and in India and Eastern culture is mostly collectivistic culture. There are differences in the behavior which have been established by many surveys, experiments, case studies. So that is what we'll discuss. Basically, we'll be discussing role of culture, genetics, environment, and then in determining mental processes and human behavior. And then we will be discussing what are the different theories which predict how will a person behave when he's a infant, when he's a child, when he's a young adult, sorry, adolescent, young adult, and then old adult. There are very interesting theories in it. For example, there is Erickson's stages of life. He tells, so he basically lays down. There is a psychologist called Eric Erickson. He lays down a whole broad pattern of what is a human life generally. How does it progresses? How does it progress? For example, when he's a child, what are the characteristics of his thought and those things. Then there are things like Piaget, Jean Piaget, who is a stalwart in psychology. His theories, and there are many other theories which we'll cover. Next is sensation, attention, and perception. This is also something which generally people find a little difficult to cover in psychology, mainly because resource is not there. Resources are not there too many. But I'll tell you on broad. Don't worry. I'll cover this chapter completely to the detail as far as detail, because I know this is a problem area, and also this research methods and method of psychology is a problem area which I've already covered. I'll cover the sensation, attention, and perception in detail. Okay, so the next thing is, the broad idea of the sensation, attention, and perception is that you get to know how does our mind function basically when it sees a stimuli. What is a stimuli? Anything which our senses see, touch, hear, feel, taste. Is it the same which is the truth, or is it something else? So there are many interesting experiments to it. For example, I'll give you a case study in which um, there has been a research conducted on many tribes which are unable to, especially primitive tribes, who in Africa, who have who do not know, the concept of geometric shapes. So basically, if you give them a road, or a plan of a road with buildings on by its sides, and everything is cut in a perfectly rectangular way, uh, and that will be something very new to them, and they will not be able to comprehend it that well compared to a Westerner who can do it very well, because that's what he has seen all throughout his life. But someone who's living in forest is not so accustomed to perfect shapes. So there have been experiments in which people have deciphered that such people of these tribes have problems in identifying such shapes. So how does culture affect perception? How does your environment affects perception? How does your mood? For example, if you are very tensed or stressed, how does it affects your, वो कभी कभी होता है ना कि if you see a rope you think that it is a snake. So those things that we'll be discussing. Okay, this video is also important for people who are not taking psychology, because they'll get an idea of what exactly they can expect. Okay, so feel free to share this video with somebody who is considering psychology, but he's not very sure whether to take or not. Okay. भारत का राजपत्र असाधारण. So next is learning. Concepts and theories which will be related. So for example, how do we grasp a new skill? How do we learn a new behavior? It is learning is related to that. We'll discuss it. This is something which is like this learning thing is something from which the present day organized branch of psychology started. It all started with behaviorism and those things. So basically, you would have heard that, an experiment in which there was a psychologist, Ivan Pavlov, who who had a dog, and then he rang a bell before giving him food, and then after a certain point of time, the dog started to salivate just on hearing the bell. So those kind of concepts we will be discussing. There'll be advanced concepts also in this. For example, how the present day psychologists view learning, and can you quit a bad habit like cigarette smoking, or if you're having too many tea in a day, can you control your own behavior by learning new set of ways to tackle a stimuli? Okay, fine. Next would be also, okay. So this learning chapter is very important, and generally two questions come. So this is important. In memory, also the one chapter will come. So memory chapter is, I think, the easiest of all, and also most interesting of all. One of the most interesting of all. I think all chapters are interesting, but memory is interesting because you will get to hear stories of people. You know the film Gajni, right? I don't know what it is called. I think in South movies also it is called Gajni. Or if you know the name, it's Tamil version or Telugu version, please comment. But if a person is able to hold only 15 minutes of memory, of his recent memory, there have been realistic cases of it. And then there was you will hear of things like there was a waiter named JC who can remember so many orders, multiple orders without even writing them. So you tell him, I want this from the menu, and he'll just go, and without any mistake ever, he has delivered all the orders. And people used to be amazed, how can he remember so many? And there was a method he applied. So basically, this can also come in handy for your general UPSC exam preparation, how to remember stuff more. Okay. This is important mainly because it is very easy to score in memory, because there are standard set of keywords and standard set of diagrams and standard set of questions we generally we'll be discussing. Next is thinking and problem solving. This is also a very interesting chapter. In this, you will read things like how can you, how can you solve problems better. For example, you would have seen that people generally get, if you have ever solved a math problem, you would know that, you try to do it using one way, answer nahi aata hai, answer does not come. Then you again do it using the same method. That is basically a mental set. Maybe you are not thinking from the correct direction. Okay, I was not able to explain this properly. Let me take another example. Let's say that you are given a hammer, and then you are told with this hammer, you have to. You are not told, but you are put in a kitchen with hammer and all the carpentry things. You will never generally think that you can use those things to cook your food, because in our minds there is a mental set that hammer is used to uh, hit nail inside the wall. But you can also use it as a आप उसको करची जैसा भी use कर सकते हो. You can use it to fry your vegetables, right? So those things are mental set, and there are many other similar things like what are heuristics, for example, what is a confirmation bias. For example, you would have heard from you would have already have it in your mind that Enserio is this was a psychology topper, uh, so he must be knowing good psychology, but that might not be true. So this is a preconceived notion that you have, with which you are coming to listen to this video. And even if I tell something wrong, you accept it. Okay, don't be afraid. It is not going to happen. I'll exercise all caution before telling you anything. But then it can happen, right? So that is a confirmation bias. That might not be true. There can be racial biases. related to the same. There are many other bias. You will get to know how to negotiate better when you go to buy something. That is called anchoring and adjustment heuristic. So there are many things like this. This is basically very interesting, and also this is marks fetching because there might be very less direct questions from it. Generally, one is definitely there, a 20 marker or 10, 15 marker. But you can use this concepts to many problems in paper two, many questions in paper two and also in paper one. So you can cross-utilize the knowledge which you gain from here. Okay. Next is motivation and emotion. Basically, what is the difference? Here, the most important question is what is the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation? If you leave the complete chapter and you just no, I'm kidding. There are other things in this chapter also. You will get to learn how does motivation affect behavior, how does emotion affect behavior, how to keep people motivated, what are the different theories of motivation. There's a great psychologist called Abraham Maslow. What did he tell about motivation? What motivates people? So he gave a hierarchy. I think I will club this chapter of paper one with another chapter in paper two, which is organizational psychology, and there we have theories of how workers are motivated or how to motivate workers. So there we will have, so that we don't have any duplication, I'll club this chapter while taking this video. I'll club this chapter to that. Again, important chapter. Many questions come from it. At least two every year. Intelligence and aptitude. So this one is, I won't like to, put it like this, but I found it the most boring chapter. Mainly because there is so much to mug up here. You have to learn a lot of theories. You see how many theories are there. Spearman, Thurston. The spelling is not correct here. Even UPSC does spelling mistakes. This correct spelling is Guilford, not Guilford. Then there should be a comma here. Vernon's theory is different from Guilford's theory. Then there's Sternberg, and then there's J.P. Das. So there are many theories here. This chapter is only about theories. Basically, they describe how can intelligence be measured, and how can you describe intelligence? Is someone who very sharp in studies, will he be good in music? Will he be good in creative intelligence? So those things we will study. But all in all, a boring chapter. But then also marks fetching, because if you remember the theory, in each theory there is a diagram. If you know that diagram, if you put that theory, masters are impressed. That means professors are impressed. They give you good. It's because there is very less scope for application here. You just write those theories in the answers, and then you get points. Personality, the most important, the most interesting chapter of all. So when someone says psychology, generally people think about Sigmund Freud. He had some weird theories of. His theories are a little weird, but nevertheless, he was a very important figure in psychology. And I think 20% of this chapter is devoted to Sigmund Freud. Things like ego, superego, id. Yes, you heard it right. Id, ID. And his whole psychodynamic theory is important. Then you will learn a lot of things about how many different kinds of people are there on the basis of different traits. There are some people who are type A personality, who need to get everything done fast, and they have to be आपने वो तारे ज़मीं पर का गाना सुना है? There's this song in Tare Zameen movie which differentiates between type A and type B personalities. So this is the song is about the Dashil Safari, who is type B, and his father and his elder brother, I guess, who are type A. So the song was like when क्यों दुनिया का नारा लगे रहो, मंजिल का इशारा लगे रहो. So it shows, it picturizes his father and his elder brother who are always on time and running in life and going to office and school at time. And then there is this song about this Dashil Safari who says, "Yahan alag andaz hai." So he takes it easy. So you will learn a lot of things, and it is very relatable personality chapter. Very interesting, and also very marks fetching. I think we'll have to devote 2 videos for personality chapter because there are lots of diagrams, lots of psychologist names, case studies, theories you can put here, which will be of value. Next is attitudes, value, and interests. Again, this chapter is also about theories, but some kind of application is there. For example, there's this theories of attitude change. So in this chapter, the best thing about this chapter is, although it is not it is equally boring as intelligence chapter, but the good thing is that you will get to learn a lot of things from here which you can pick and use in paper 2. So देखो paper 2 में किस तरह के questions आते हैं? How can you change this behavior of society? How can you change that behavior of society? How can you change this social problem, that social problem? So even in paper 1, in some of the questions you can use many concepts. For example, what do people feel about Swachh Bharat, or how do you think poverty is because of people's attitude? If yes, how can it be changed? Or even after Swachh Bharat has come, people still you know this is a real question, by the way. 2016 or 17 it had come. People still put garbage on streets. Is that an attitude problem? If yes, then I'll tell you the definition of attitude when we come to the real video of this chapter. But if you know the theories of attitude change, you can put and apply those and write a very creative answer. So I think in my answers, especially in paper 2, I think 50% of the answers contain some or the other theories from this chapter. So if you master this chapter, it will have a domino effect on marks on paper 2 especially, and also in many parts in paper 1, because these days sometimes they don't ask questions which is limited to one chapter. They'll ask something which is very general, and then you'll have to apply. Okay, and also there are direct questions from this chapter 12. For example, they directly ask you what is cognitive dissonance theory of attitude change, or what are stereotypes and those things. Anyway, next is language and communication. I think this is the last chapter. Oh no, this is the second last chapter of paper 1, but practically this is the last chapter, because the last chapter is something which does not generally come. But anyway, I will not take this last chapter, which is the 14th chapter. I will not take this as a different video, because many of this I'll cover in sensation, perception, and attention. For example, this sleep cycles, stimulus deprivation. You see, stimulus deprivation, this is more related to perception, but this is a modern part of psychology. So meditation, hypnotic, and extrasensory perception. I don't know why they have created a new chapter out of this. So much of it I will be covering in perception. And some things like psycho-cybernetics I'll cover in motivation. And yeah, computer application and psychological laboratory testing. Basically, they are talking about SPSS and those things. Factor analysis, R, MATLAB, how would you use them? So this I'll cover in statistics method. I've already covered actually. So you don't need to worry about this chapter as a separate video. So I won't be covering this. So पहले बता दे रहा हूँ, बाद में मत रोइएगा कि ये वाला chapter नहीं हुआ, ठीक है? Let's come to the second last chapter, which is language and communication. This talks about how do we develop language. Basically, in this chapter, there is only one thing to study, which is how does Skinner's theory differ from Chomsky's theory. You take out the question papers of last 10 years, you will find out every year they are asking this particular question in some way or the other. For example, they'll directly ask what was Skinner's theory of language development? How does it differ from Chomsky? Or as they asked in my time, 2018, they asked, uh, how does, sorry, my time was 2017, not 2018. They will ask, what is, describe Chomsky's transformative generative grammar. Uh, Pardon my complete pronunciation of that theory, but yeah, so you can draw a diagram there and get good marks. Basically, it's all about theories. So this is not a very interesting chapter again, but some parts are interesting. For example, critical period hypothesis. So this thing we'll cover in a good way, so that you can get more marks. There are only very few things which are interesting in this chapter, but by and large, this is a bugging up chapter, but I'll cover it in detail, don't worry. Okay. Coming to paper 2, I won't go in very detail in paper 2 syllabus because it is a very cross cultural thing. So I'll just tell one line about not cross cultural, cross functional kind of. Basically, you have to write almost same kind of answers. I scored the highest in paper 2 in my time, and also overall in psychology. So I can tell you that every paper 2 answer has a similar way of writing, and I'll tell you that in my subsequent videos. So each of these things which are given, for example, problems of people of military is almost the same. The solutions to that is almost the same to problems of people who are really under economic deprivation. See here. Okay, let's go one by one. Psychological measurement of differences. So basically, here you will, read mostly about what are the different scales to measure emotion, intelligence, and those things, which we'll cover mostly in paper 1 only. But here they'll concentrate on ethical issues, whether you should tell somebody is more intelligent than other or not, whether IQ is good, is a good scale ethically or not. So basically, आप किसी बच्चे को पहले से ही बोल दो कि तेरी IQ कम है, so he'll be demotivated and might not do well in life. His confidence level will be affected. Those things. This is an interesting chapter here. This is not a general thing which I told in the beginning for paper 2, which is basically mental disorders. What is schizophrenia? What are phobias? What are anxiety disorders and those things? So this is about diseases, psychological diseases which happen. Therapeutic approaches is mainly about how to solve what are the different therapies by which you can, without giving medicine, what are the therapies which can help in, curing mental illnesses. Then, from chapter 4, everything, the answers to all would be almost common. See here also, this is the chapter I was talking about, theories of work motivation. This I'll combine in paper 1. You have Herzberg, Maslow, Adam Liquidity, Porter and Law, Bloom, those things. Basically, this chapter deals with what is the psychology of an organization or people who are working in professional fields. Then in educational field, how to teach well, how to read well, and how to handle different kinds of students. Then there's community psychology, for example, social problems, how can small groups in action bring about social change. For example, let's say, आपने वो movie देखी होगी ना, स्वदेश. How does Shah Rukh Khan alone bring a change in the mindset of community? So he uses, we don't realize it, but when you will study psychology, you will get to know the principles he uses, psychological principles he uses, the protagonist of that story, to bring about social change. So those things we'll study here. Then rehabilitation psychology. That means once someone is cured of his mental illness, how do you make him come back to the normal society? This is not something which is very marks fetching, but sometimes they do ask questions from it. Then there is application of psychology of disadvantaged groups. For example, somebody who's poor, somebody who's disabled, or even women in general. So basically, any group which is of having the relative disadvantage, people of lower castes, people who are economically deprived, anybody who is deprived uh, in any dimension, what is the psychology of those people, how to do good things for them. Then there is social integration problem. That means how can psychology help in caste conflicts, religion conflicts, those things. How some people have problems in integrating with society. Then there is application of psychology in information technology and mass media. So basically, this is a chapter which has been jabarasti put in the syllabus because so as to sound you know relevant to the present times. So basically, it talks about how TV. They are still mentioning TV, but I think it should be mainly internet now. How it is affecting. So we'll be talking about things like social media, TV, how is it affecting adolescents, children, people, adults, um, religion in general. Is it creating negative influences by which, or even positive influences? So, what is the role of social media in general human psychology? Not social media, mass media, and uh, the general information technology. What is effect does it have? Then the next chapter. This is an important chapter, and I really like this. This is like इसमें तो बस एक ही चीज़ है सबसे important, and that is that guy's experiment, Kakinad experiment of what was his name? Uh, Kakinad experiment. Okay, I'll remember in some time and then I'll tell you. There was a guy who conducted an experiment about how is your thought process uh, you know related to your economic development. Okay, then he utilized the concept of need for achievement, and as they call it, and how is it related to? Okay. Um, and next is how is environment, and climate change and those things, population, pollution also. How how can psychology help in it? Then there are some small sections in chapter 13, which is how is psychology be applied to military people, then in sports people, like sportsmen. Like athletes and people who, let's say there's an athlete who got injured, how do you motivate him to continue, because that's the only thing he knew in his life, right? So next is media influences on pro and antisocial behavior. Basically this will be covered in this chapter only, this one IT wala chapter. And then there is psychology of terrorism. Why do people become terrorists? Why do they take weapons against the government or against the civilians? Then there is psychology of gender. That means how does culture, environment, those things influence women in general. So although it is talking about psychology of gender, but this chapter is mostly about women. So what is a glass ceiling effect? Why can't women who are basically equal to men, but they have problems in coming up the corporate ladder, or why do they start believing that they are not as equal to men, and how can we help resolve the gender differences? That will be mostly your that's the end of paper 2. uh, I hope I was able to give a very broad, don't judge the course by this particular video and be coming with better video. This was just to give an overview of somebody who is planning to take psychology, what to expect, to what to do. Okay. Uh, so yeah, so in coming days, we'll be covering these topics, some or the other topic, some or the other day. I got a very good feedback from a lot of you that you are excited for this course to commence, and I'm glad that you are interested. Even if one of you is interested, I'll keep on having this course. If you have any suggestions or any doubts regarding the whole course, how it will proceed or anything, you can put it on the comments. I'll reply. Okay, I'll most probably start with learning chapter, which was chapter 3 or 4 in the syllabus, because that is the foundation of psychology. I won't start with the introduction to psychology. I'll cover it in some later video. There will be the learning chapter I'll start with, and sooner or later I'll cover everything before July ends, at the max before first week of August ends. Okay, if I do not do it, you can keep me, make me responsible. You can sue me. No, you cannot sue me. You can basically complain in comments. But yeah, I'll try my best to finish the course with quality. Okay, thank you, friends.